My fiancée went behind my back and invited the one person who ruined my entire life to our wedding. She didn't even bother to tell me. So, I called the whole thing off, and she never saw it coming. Let me start from the beginning. My name's Nicholas. I'm 31 years old, and about 6 months ago, I proposed to my girlfriend, Sharon. We'd been together for 5 years, and I honestly thought we were stepping into what would be the happiest part of our lives. We had everything lined up for the wedding next month. But recent events flipped that dream on its head, and I realized just how wrong I'd been about everything. To understand how it all unraveled, I need to give you a bit of background. I've got a younger sister named Kathleen. She's 28 now, and we haven't spoken in over 9 years, and trust me, there are solid reasons for that. Growing up, Kathleen and I were like oil and water. We just never clicked. Our parents kept trying to mold us into this picture-perfect sibling duo, but all we ever did was butt heads. Kathleen had this obsessive need to compete with me over everything: school, sports, attention, you name it. I still remember the day that kind of set the tone for everything that came after. I was 10 and had just won the school's spelling bee. Our parents took us out for ice cream to celebrate, which felt like a big deal at the time. But instead of being happy for me, Kathleen completely lost it right there in the ice cream parlor. She started screaming that it wasn't fair, claiming she could spell better than I could. She demanded our parents quiz her on the spot, turning what should have been a proud moment into a cringe-worthy scene. I felt humiliated. And that was just the beginning. As we got older, her behavior didn't just stay the Raymond, it got worse. Say I aced a test, she'd obsessively study until she could match or beat my score. When I was 12, I won a local art competition, and again, our folks took us out to celebrate. But instead of just being supportive, Kathleen threw a fit in the middle of the restaurant. She shouted that she was the better artist, and insisted on showing everyone her drawings right then and there. What should have been a happy night turned into another embarrassing meltdown. This wasn't just a once-in-a-while thing, it became the pattern. That constant need to one-up me defined our childhood. If I made the basketball team, suddenly basketball was her new obsession. If I showed interest in a girl during high school, she'd go out of her way to befriend the girl, or even flirt with her. It was like she couldn't let me have anything to myself. Home never really felt like a place to relax. It was more like living in a non-stop rivalry. Our parents tried their best. When I was 16 and Kathleen was 13, they even put us in family therapy, hoping it might fix things. But Kathleen didn't want to participate. She'd just sit there, arms folded, staring off into space while the therapist tried to coax something, anything, out of her. Eventually, the therapist told our parents there wasn't much they could do unless Kathleen was willing to cooperate. Things kept building until they finally exploded when we were both in our early 20s. I had just graduated from college and landed what I considered my dream job, a role at a top-tier marketing firm. It paid well, had amazing benefits, and gave me the chance to work on real, meaningful campaigns. I was proud of myself. I'd worked hard to get there. Kathleen, on the other hand, was still bouncing around in college. She'd switched majors 4 times already, and she was barely hanging on, constantly behind on deadlines and on the verge of academic probation. At a family dinner, I shared the news about my job offer, expecting at least some kind of congratulations. But instead, Kathleen went off like a bomb. Her face twisted with fury, and she started yelling at me in front of everyone. "You always have to be the star, don't you?" she snapped. "Why can't you screw up for once, so someone else can actually shine?" Her words cut deep, but what really stuck with me was the look in her eyes. It wasn't just anger, it was envy, bitterness, and something a little darker. Our parents tried to calm her down, telling her she still had time to find her way and that my success didn't take away from her own. She wasn't buying it. She stormed out of the room, slamming the door so hard it knocked a picture off the wall. Later that night, I overheard her on the phone with a friend. She was ranting, saying things like, "He's not going to keep rubbing this in my face," and "I'll make sure he gets knocked down a peg or two." I figured it was just more drama, another one of her episodes. I had no idea how wrong I was. Just a few days before I was supposed to start that job, I got a message from the HR department. They told me they'd received some concerning materials during a sudden background review. Turns out, someone had sent them forged emails and fake social media screenshots, all made to look like they came from me. These fakes were full of hateful, offensive stuff, totally made up, but enough to kill any job opportunity. I was crushed when they told me the offer was being rescinded. Just like that, the job I'd worked so hard to earn was gone. And it didn't take long to figure out who was behind it. Kathleen was the only one who had enough personal information to pull off something that specific. I confronted her about it. At first, she played dumb, giving me this cold little smirk and brushing it off. But when I kept pressing, she finally cracked. "Maybe now you'll know what it feels like," she said, her voice shaking. "You've always been the golden boy. The one everyone looks up to. It's about time you got a taste of failure." I was stunned. I couldn't even speak. My own sister had gone out of her way to destroy everything I'd worked for, out of pure jealousy and spite. It wasn't just a betrayal. It felt like an open act of war. But eventually, her mask slipped and the truth came out. She confessed it all, how she'd created fake accounts, doctored emails, and purposely wrecked my reputation. And why? Just so she could watch me fail. There was something twisted in the way she admitted it, like she was proud of herself for finally beating me at something. I was gutted. This wasn't just a sibling rivalry gone too far. This was full-blown sabotage from someone who was supposed to be family. I looked her in the eye and told her I never wanted to see or speak to her again. Then I walked out and didn't look back. That night, I crashed on a buddy's couch, trying to process the mess my life had suddenly become. Over the next few years, I completely cut Kathleen out. She was dead to me. My parents still saw her now and then, but they learned pretty quickly not to bring her up when I was around. Rebuilding my life was no small task. I had to start over in a job that paid less and offered fewer opportunities, and I had to prove myself all over again. But I did it. Slowly but surely, I climbed my way back up. Now I've got a solid career, great friends, and until recently I had Sharon. When I met Sharon 5 years ago, it felt like life was finally starting to make sense again. She was sweet, quick-witted, and really seemed to get me. By our 4th date, I decided to open up about Kathleen. I laid everything out, what had happened, what she did to me, and why I wanted nothing to do with her. Sharon listened closely. She said she understood that family stuff could be messy, and she respected my decision to cut ties. And I made one thing absolutely clear: Kathleen was not to be a part of my life. Not at all. Especially not at my wedding. At first, Sharon seemed to be on board with that. But as the wedding planning picked up speed, something started to shift. She kept bringing up Kathleen now and then, suggesting that maybe it was time I let the past go. Each time, I shut the conversation down. Just thinking about seeing Kathleen again made my stomach twist. My wedding day was supposed to be one of the best days of my life, and the idea of her being there turned it into a nightmare. Sharon would drop the topic for a while, but I could sense her disappointment. She wasn't letting it go completely. Things finally blew up just last week. We were putting the finishing touches on the guest list when she brought up Kathleen again, and this time, she didn't back off. We were sitting in the living room, the list spread out on the coffee table, and I was already drained from work. I really didn't have the energy to revisit the Raymond fight for the 100th time. But Sharon had that look in her eye, determined, hopeful, and maybe a little desperate. "Nicholas," she started gently, like she was trying not to trigger a landmine. "I really think you should reconsider inviting Kathleen. She's your sister. Don't you think it's time to forgive and move on?" I clenched my jaw. I'd heard those exact words before, but somehow, this time they hit deeper. Maybe it was how tired I was, or maybe it was the way she was looking at me, like she was begging me to be someone else, someone more forgiving. Either way, it hit different. "Sharon," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "we've talked about this. She's not coming. If she shows up, the whole day is ruined for me. You know what she did? She let out a quiet sigh, and I could tell she was frustrated. But it was so long ago, she said. People change, Nicholas. Maybe she's sorry now. Maybe she regrets it. That familiar rage started bubbling in my chest. Regrets it? She ruined my life. She didn't just hurt my feelings, she nuked my career, dragged my name through the dirt, and smiled while she did it. You don't just come back from that with a simple apology. Sharon's eyes searched mine, trying to find something, anything, that said I might meet her halfway. I'm not saying what she did was okay, she said softly. I just think, maybe she deserves the chance to make things right. I stared at her, dumbfounded. Why are you so set on this? Why does she get a pass? Why does she deserve to be part of our wedding? Sharon's expression changed. Her voice turned firm. Because family matters, Nicholas. I can't imagine cutting off someone forever. Her words hit harder than I expected. Family? I shot back. You think this is about some stupid grudge? She didn't just break my favorite toy or read my diary, she sabotaged me. I had to rebuild everything in my life from the ground up because of her. She shook her head, her patience thinning. You're being stubborn. She made a mistake when she was younger, and you're still punishing her for it. That was the moment I lost it. A mistake? I snapped. Do you even understand what it felt like? To lose the job I worked my whole life for? To get blacklisted over lies she made up because she couldn't handle me succeeding? That's not a mistake, Sharon. That's straight-up cruelty. She folded her arms, looking away, her voice cold now. Maybe she's grown since then. Maybe she wants to apologize. And maybe I don't care, I said, my voice sharp. She made her choices, and I made mine. I told you this was a boundary I wasn't willing to budge on. If you can't respect that, maybe we shouldn't be getting married. Sharon's eyes widened like I just slapped her. I could see the pain spread across her face like a slow-moving storm. You're seriously ending this over her? She asked, barely above a whisper. Yes, I said quietly but firmly. Because this isn't just about her. It's about trust. You knew how much this mattered to me, and you're still pushing. That's not support. That's disrespect. We sat in silence. The kind that wraps around you like a heavy blanket. I could feel my heartbeat thudding in my ears as everything started to sink in. Then she whispered, I thought you'd understand. I thought love meant forgiveness. I shook my head slowly. Love also means respect. And if you can't respect my boundaries, then I don't know what we have left. She didn't respond. Just sat there, her eyes glassy with tears that refused to fall. After a while, she got up and quietly left the room. I stayed there alone, staring at that guest list, the names turning blurry as my own eyes began to mist. The next day, things were tense. Sharon barely said a word to me after that night. And when she did speak, it was in short, stiff sentences, polite, sure, but cold. Honestly, that quiet distance was worse than if we'd had a full-blown screaming match. At least shouting shows passion. This was something else. Like a wall had dropped between us, and neither of us had a clue how to bring it down. I kept trying to convince myself that it would blow over. We loved each other, right? We'd been through plenty before, surely this was just another bump in the road. But deep down, I knew better. Something had cracked, and I couldn't shake the feeling that things wouldn't go back to the way they were. Once trust starts to fall apart, patching it back together never feels quite the Raymond. A week later, everything came crashing down. I got home late from work, drained, running on fumes. The second I walked through the door, I saw Sharon sitting at the dining table. Her face was pale, hands shaking slightly, and the tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. My gut twisted. What's going on? I asked carefully. She looked up at me, and the guilt in her eyes said more than words ever could. Nicholas, I need to tell you something, she said, voice barely steady. My stomach dropped. I felt a weight settle in my chest. What is this about? I asked, keeping my voice even, though a low thrum of dread had already taken hold. I reached out to Kathleen, she whispered. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. You what? The words came out louder than I meant. Sharper, too. I found her on social media a few months ago, she went on, tears beginning to well up. We've been talking. I just wanted to understand things better between you two, and I invited her to the wedding. It felt like the floor dropped out from under me. My vision blurred, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. You invited her? I said, barely able to keep my voice from shaking. I'm sorry, she said, breaking into sobs. I thought it was the right thing to do. I thought if she came, maybe it would help you both heal. No, I cut in, my voice sharp and shaking with disbelief. You went behind my back. I told you exactly how I felt, and you ignored me. That's not love, Sharon. That's betrayal. Nicholas, please, she begged through her tears. I love you. I really thought I was doing the right thing. Help? I laughed, but it was hollow. Empty. You knew what she did to me, and you still chose her over my boundaries. That's not helping. That's manipulation. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. My chest ached. It felt like my heart was shattering into pieces too sharp to hold. Nicholas, wait, there's more, she said, her voice raw. I thought she changed. I really did. But after we talked, I realized I was wrong. She paused, like the words themselves burned her throat. She said, when I told her who I was, she said, "Oh, you're his new girl? How can you even be with such a loser?" I clenched my fists. My jaw locked. Of course Kathleen hadn't changed. Of course she couldn't even fake decency for one damn conversation. Even when someone reached out in kindness, she spat in their face. Sharon was crying now, tears running down her cheeks like rivers she couldn't stop. That's when I realized you were right, she whispered. I should have listened. I thought I was helping, but I only made everything worse. I'm so sorry, Nicholas. I see now how much she hurt you. Her apology filled the space between us, but it didn't ease the pain. It didn't change what she'd done. You should have trusted me, I said quietly. You should have respected what I told you I needed. She buried her face in her hands and sobbed, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. My heart felt torn apart. The one person I thought would always have my back had decided she knew better, and that stung worse than anything Kathleen ever did. If you can't trust my judgment, if you can't respect my boundaries, then what are we even doing? I asked. Don't say that, she cried. We can fix this. I shook my head slowly, the pain bubbling over. No, Sharon. You broke my trust. And without trust, there's nothing left to fix. I turned and walked away. Each step felt heavier than the last, like my body already knew this was the end. The air between us had changed. It wasn't just tense, it was final. It hit me all at once. We were done. And it hurt like hell. That night I slept in the guest room, or at least I tried to. I lay there staring at the ceiling for hours, every word we'd said running on a loop in my head. Anger. Sadness. Regret. It was all spinning around in a storm I couldn't shut off. Sleep never came. Just the overwhelming noise of heartbreak. When morning came, the weight of it all pressed down on me. I heard Sharon moving through the apartment, quiet, methodical. I didn't need to see her to know what she was doing. She was packing. I didn't stop her. When she finally walked into the room, suitcase in hand, our eyes met. Her cheeks were damp with tears, but her face had that calm kind of sadness, like someone who'd already accepted the goodbye. Are you sure this is what you want, Nicholas? She asked softly. I swallowed hard. No, Sharon. This isn't what I want. But it's what you left me with. She nodded, wiping at her face with the back of her hand. I never meant to hurt you. I know, I said, my voice cracking. But that doesn't change what you did. We stood there for a moment in silence, the kind that carries all the words you never say out loud. Then she turned, opened the door, and walked out. The sound of it closing behind her felt like a punch to the chest. I sank onto the couch, the apartment suddenly feeling way too big. The silence wrapped around me, thick and unforgiving. It was over. 5 years gone. And once again, because of Kathleen. The days that followed blurred together. I made the calls. Cancelled the venue, the caterer, the florist. One by one, I unwound everything we'd planned. Every phone call I made to cancel the wedding felt like tearing down a dream, one painful piece at a time. Each one chipped away at what we'd built, like I was dismantling my own happiness with a dull knife. My friends tried to be there for me, offering support in their own awkward ways. Still, I could tell some of them didn't get it. Not really. They didn't know the whole story. Sharon's family, though, they didn't even try to hide their anger. Her mom called me up and unloaded on me, saying I was heartless, that I'd thrown away something beautiful over what she called petty family drama. Her brother, who I'd once considered a close friend, sent me this long, venomous text. Told me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. I just stared at the message, feeling nothing. Not anger. Not guilt. Just empty. They didn't know the truth. They didn't understand how deep the pain ran, how long the damage had been festering. And then my own family decided it was their turn to chime in. My parents started calling nonstop. Voicemails piled up, some were desperate, others downright manipulative. My mom's voice cracked in one of them. "Nicholas, please. This could be a chance to heal the family. Don't let this tear us apart." But I wasn't the one who tore anything apart. Kathleen did. And now, Sharon had joined her. The people who were supposed to stand beside me, protect me, respect me, they were the ones crossing lines I couldn't uncross. Then one evening, after dragging myself through another brutal day at work, I came home to an email. It was from Kathleen. My first instinct was to delete it. Just click and be done. But my curiosity got the better of me. The subject line was simple: "I'm sorry." I opened it. The message was long, filled with what she claimed were heartfelt apologies. She talked about how she'd been in therapy for years, trying to unpack her jealousy and resentment. She admitted she'd done awful things, unforgivable things, even, but insisted she was different now. She said she wanted to reconnect, to make amends, to actually be a sister. I stared at her words, but all I felt was tired. Completely drained. Was I supposed to believe a few years in therapy could undo what she did? That it could erase the moment I lost my dream job? That it could fix the embarrassment, the struggle, the years it took to rebuild a life she had tried to ruin? Those scars ran too deep. I closed the email and didn't write back. That weekend I stayed home, just trying to process everything. My thoughts kept drifting back to Sharon. I missed her, God, I missed her. The way she'd laugh at my terrible puns. The way she'd get so animated when talking about things she loved. The way her head fit perfectly on my shoulder during movie nights. But that ache was tangled in something heavier. I couldn't stop thinking about how she'd ignored the one boundary I'd made crystal clear from the beginning. She didn't just make a mistake, she chose to prove a point, and it cost us everything. I tried to outrun the feelings by hitting the basketball court. I ran until my legs were jelly. Lifted weights until my muscles screamed. Tried to bury the emotional pain under physical exhaustion. Afterward, I sat alone in my car, sweat soaking through my shirt, just staring through the windshield. Was I being too hard-headed? Was losing Sharon really worth this line I drew in the sand? But every time I edged toward reaching out, I remembered the exact feeling in my chest when she admitted what she'd done. That raw, hollow gut punch. The moment I realized the person I loved had gone behind my back, thinking she knew better than me. No matter how much I still loved her, that feeling hadn't gone away. That wound hadn't even started to close. Tuesday morning, I walked into work feeling like I'd left my soul somewhere behind me. Everything felt foggy, distant, like I was sleepwalking through someone else's life. Brenda, my boss, called me into her office. She was always the no-nonsense type, but that morning, her voice was softer than usual. You holding up okay? She asked, her eyes sharp but kind. I gave her a half smile. I'm working on it. She nodded, watching me a moment. Standing your ground when it costs you something. It's one of the hardest things you can do. But if it's the right thing, it's worth it. Those words stuck with me. I threw myself into work that day, letting the rhythm of code and deadlines drown out the noise in my head. By the time I got home, the apartment was quiet. Too quiet. But for the first time in a while, I felt a sliver of peace. Painful as it was, I knew I'd made the right call. Later that night, I went back to that email from Kathleen and deleted it. I didn't need to reread it. I already knew where I stood. Life kept moving after that, but I felt frozen in place. The apartment, once warm and full of laughter, now echoed with absence. Her side of the closet stood empty. The bathroom shelves looked half-stripped. And every now and then, I'd hear something in the silence that made me think she was still there, her voice, her laugh, but it was just memory playing tricks on me. I buried myself in work. Took on longer hours. Tackled harder projects. Anything to keep from sitting still too long. But no matter how busy I got, the weight never really lifted. The betrayal. The broken trust. The future I thought I had, now just dust in my hands. It all followed me like a shadow I couldn't shake. And then, one evening, my phone lit up. It was my parents'. I almost let it go to voicemail, like I'd been doing, but something in me said to pick up. Hi, Mom, I said, my voice flat. Nicholas, she said, her tone careful. Please come to dinner this weekend. We need to talk. I don't think that's a good idea, I said, already feeling the tension climb into my shoulders. Please, she said again, more urgent this time. It's important. Against my better judgment, I said okay. Maybe a small part of me still hoped they'd finally hear me out. Maybe they'd understand where I was coming from. But in my gut I knew I was setting myself up to be let down again. Saturday rolled around. I drove to the house I grew up in, stomach twisted in knots. The place looked the Raymond, but the memories felt heavier now, weighed down by all the years of pain we tried to ignore. I walked up the steps and took a deep breath before knocking. My mom opened the door, giving me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She pulled me into a hug. It felt more like a plea than a welcome. I'm so glad you came, she whispered. I stepped inside, and immediately something felt off. The air was heavy, like the pressure before a storm breaks. Then I saw her. Kathleen. Sitting at the dining table. Her eyes locked with mine, wide, unsure, carrying something that almost resembled regret. But it didn't matter. A cold, furious wave surged through me. What is she doing here? I snapped, my voice trembling with anger. My dad stepped in, his expression heavy with emotion. Nicholas, please. We just want to help you make peace. I looked around the room, trying to process what was happening. What the hell is wrong with everyone? I asked, the betrayal hitting me like a gut punch. You planned this behind my back? You ambushed me. My mom's eyes welled up with tears. We thought if you two could just talk, maybe you'd find a way to heal. I shook my head slowly, fists clenched at my sides. You still don't get it. You never have. Nicholas, wait. Kathleen started, her voice shaking. I just want to say I'm sorry. Her words landed like static in my ears, empty and meaningless. I turned toward my parents, bitterness rising like bile. You're still trying to patch something that can't be fixed. Some things don't heal just because you want them to. My dad's voice cracked. We just want our family back. I stared at them, heart pounding. Then this is your family now, I said coldly. A family where betrayal gets swept under the rug, and trust means nothing. I turned and walked toward the door, the weight of the moment pressing into my shoulders like concrete. I told you where I stood. If you can't respect that, then I don't know what else there is to say. Behind me, my mom started sobbing. Her cries followed me down the front steps, but I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. The night air slapped against my face as I stepped outside, but it felt good. Clean. Honest. For the first time in a long while, my head felt clear. The lines had been drawn, and I hadn't crossed theirs, but I wouldn't let them cross mine either. I sat in my car for a long time before driving off, just staring at the steering wheel, the streetlights reflecting off the windshield. My phone lit up with messages. My parents, Kathleen, Eve and Sharon. They must have told her everything. I didn't respond. I wasn't ready to explain myself again, to beg for understanding I'd already earned and been denied. I'd done that enough for one lifetime. When I finally walked through the door of my apartment, it felt different. For once, the silence didn't feel like a punishment, it felt like space I could finally breathe in. I was done holding on to relationships that hurt more than they helped. Done forcing myself to piece together something that had long since stopped fitting. Over the next few days, I gave myself time to just be quiet. No distractions, no pretending. Just me. Alone with my thoughts. I knew I'd burned bridges that couldn't be rebuilt. And still, there was something freeing in that. I wasn't dragging around the weight of everyone else's expectations anymore. I didn't owe forgiveness to anyone who hadn't earned it. Eventually, I reached out to a few friends. They'd been worried about me, checking in during the silence. I figured it was time to come out of hiding. We met at a quiet bar downtown, the kind of place where the music hummed low, and you could actually have a conversation. As I sipped my drink and listened to the laughter around me, it hit me how much I'd isolated myself. The world hadn't stopped because my engagement had ended. Life kept going. And maybe, so could I. As we left, my friend Raymond clapped me on the back. "You did the right thing, man," he said. "Takes guts to stand your ground." I gave a small nod, a faint smile tugging at my lips. For the first time, I actually believed him. Standing firm had cost me a lot, but losing myself would have cost even more. The next morning, I took a walk along the beach. The waves were gentle, the breeze cool, and the sunlight danced across the water like gold. I filled my lungs with the salty air and let it all out slowly. There was still pain. Still grief. But there was also something new, hope. I was free now to build a life that honored my boundaries, a life that didn't ask me to compromise my peace just to keep someone else comfortable. I didn't know what came next, but for once, that uncertainty didn't scare me. I'd take it one step at a time. Day by day, I'd rebuild something stronger. As time passed, life settled into a new rhythm. I wasn't the Raymond person I was before the breakup, and I didn't want to be. I felt more grounded now. More honest with myself. I spent more time with friends who truly saw me, who accepted me with no conditions. We hiked along hidden cliff trails, gathered around bonfires on crisp evenings, shared stories and quiet moments that reminded me what real connection felt like. These friendships were real. No expectations, no betrayals. Just mutual respect and presence. They gave me the strength to keep moving forward. Work was steady. I poured myself into projects and took on new challenges. My boss, Benjamin, a sharp, no BS kind of woman, pulled me aside one day after a team meeting. "You've been killing it lately," she said, offering a rare smile. "I can tell you're locked in. Keep that momentum." I nodded, a flicker of pride warming my chest. Her words reminded me that I hadn't been destroyed by my past, I'd been refined by it. I was still here. Still capable. Still pushing forward. One weekend I decided it was time to clear out the apartment. To let go of the pieces of a life that no longer existed. As I went through drawers and closets, I found little fragments of Sharon, a lone earring, a movie ticket from a night that once felt magical, a half-scribbled grocery list in her handwriting. Each item carried a weight. A memory. But instead of letting them break me down, I let them go. I packed them neatly in a box, sealed it shut, and set it aside. Letting go didn't mean forgetting. It meant choosing not to carry the weight of what could have been. I rearranged the furniture. Picked up a few plants. Hung some new artwork. The apartment started to feel like mine again. Not ours. Mine. And that mattered. One night, while I was in the kitchen trying out a new recipe, something I never used to have time for, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom. "We miss you. Please talk to us when you're ready." I stared at it for a long time. The dinner ambush still stung, and I hadn't forgotten how that felt. But I also knew they weren't bad people. Just people who didn't always know how to show love the right way. They didn't mean to hurt me, they just didn't get it. They didn't understand how deep the pain went, or how hard I had to fight just to protect the boundaries that kept me whole. And that's not something you can explain in a single text or dinner conversation. So I didn't reply to my mom's message, not right away, anyway. I needed more time to process everything, and that was okay. Healing's not a race. Sometimes it takes longer than people want it to. And that's just part of the deal. A few weeks later, I ended up at this rooftop party downtown. A friend had dragged me out, saying I needed a change of scenery. I wasn't expecting anything beyond a few beers and some half-decent tacos. But then I met Olivia. She had this easygoing smile and a kind of calm confidence that put me at ease right away. Talking to her felt effortless. We went from favorite books to weird road trip stories to debating the best barbecue joints in Texas like we'd known each other for years. What struck me most was that she didn't dig for details about my past. She didn't ask about my ex or my family or anything heavy. She just let me be present, in the moment, and that felt like a gift. With her, I didn't have to explain why certain things mattered so much to me. I didn't have to justify my pain or my boundaries. I could just exist, and that was more refreshing than I knew I needed. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple, Olivia turned to me and smiled. "Feel like grabbing a milkshake?" she asked. I laughed. "Sure. As long as there's no karaoke involved." She laughed too, genuine, easy, unforced, and in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't butterflies. It wasn't love at first sight. It was something quieter, something steadier, a sense of peace. The simple warmth of human connection, and the hope that maybe, just maybe, the road ahead held something good. Later that night, walking back into my apartment, I paused at the door. I wasn't over everything that had happened. I still carried the scars, Kathleen's betrayal, Sharon's broken trust. Those things didn't disappear just because I'd met someone new or had a good night. But they weren't the whole story either. They were part of me, sure. But they didn't define me. I was stronger now, clearer on who I was, and what I needed to be okay. I'd come a long way from the guy who let everyone else's comfort come before his own peace. I walked over to the window and looked out at the Austin skyline, lights blinking in the distance, cars crawling along the highway, the world moving like it always does. And I realized, I was still moving too. I didn't know exactly where the road ahead would take me. There were still unknowns, still healing to do. But I wasn't afraid of that anymore. I had my boundaries. I had my self-respect. And for the first time in a long while, I had a solid grip on who I was and what I was worth. Sometimes, standing your ground means letting go of people you thought you'd never lose. It means walking away from comfort, from familiarity, from love that doesn't love you back the way you need. But in return, you get something far more valuable. You find yourself. And for me, that was a trade I was finally ready to make.